Ladies and gentlemen, here's my friend Professor Brian once again, and he's going to talk to us about energy and how that affects all of us.
Jade, so I'm hoping that you will develop your talents here and be at the beginning of what might be what Paul Kangas is calling solar justice for California. We're in a day of ignorance, right? It's not like a special day just because it's Friday. Every day is a day of ignorance. We're ignorant about how serious our problems are right now, and we've been sold for the last 4 or 5 years. Every day there's a solution. The oil industry is getting that solution right away. It's something you haven't heard of, right? But every time you hear about it, it's worse than the last thing. It seems to explode or cause somebody to die. What you see in California right now is the result of this. The climate change is undeniable. The science is undeniable. People say, well, it's controversial. It isn't controversial. It's been clearly understood since about 1955 how carbon dioxide primarily will affect the Earth's climate. And we can see this measured. We see it with our satellites. We see the ice sheets melting. Greenland last year, the entire ice sheet of Greenland started melting for 2 days before it decided to stop and freeze back. Lucky for us. Next year, that might not be the case. If the ice sheet melts, the ocean will rise. I think it's a foot or two just from there. Okay, just from that. Right? Not to mention all the other problems you have. Very, very serious problem. So we have to wake up from this ignorance, and in order to do that, we need a cause. And the cause is actually water. The drought, hasn't anybody seen what's going on? There's no water. It is possible that by the end of the year you may get nothing out of your tap. It's that serious. Nobody's paying the slightest bit of attention. Today is a day of ignorance. It's like proclaiming a holiday. But every day's been this way since basically the September 11th attack. If Al Gore had been president, I think we wouldn't have quite this history, this destiny that we've been given. So Jay, I'm hoping you'll be right in the forefront of interviewing all the men on the street to see how they can get into the solar industry. If you and Paul Kangas and other people are really going to contribute to this, it isn't just news. Right? We need to bring it up to the politicians. There's going to be a conference here called Intersolar on July 7th or 8th, and the governor's going to be there. He is in a remarkable position. The first time he was governor, there was also a terrible drought in 1976, and so he's seeing it all over again. So he has no doubts what the problem is and what the cause is. He said, we have to stop burning fossil fuels. So what we need to do is take back the oil companies' profits, PG&E's profits, and put that solar to work on your houses. Millions of them in a short period of time could be equipped with this. It's happened in Europe. They've done it, actually. It's famous in Germany. So that's what Paul Kangas is always talking about. So if you talk to Paul Kangas, you will find out a lot about that. He went there, he met and was friends with the man who was able to transform that part of the German economy. Hermann Scherer is their sort of the Benjamin Franklin for solar power. We have approximately 6 times more actual solar energy in California than the Germans have on the ground on a yearly basis. It's cloudy and rainy and snows a lot in Germany, and it's it's north. There's no reason not to do this. And the reason you have to do this is because with the drought, they've shut off the irrigation, but they've also they're holding back what little water's left in the dams, so the rivers are running dry. Right? There's no hydropower. The West, as of last year, was producing 25% of all of our energy, all of this energy, everything that you hear and see that's mechanical, is powered by the electricity from those dams. It's 25%. This is going to be lost this year. And to make it up, they're going to have to frack more natural gas and try to build new turbine power plants, possibly, to make up the difference, right? It's as if we've been doomed. Every time you hear what big business is doing, it's some kind of doom. It doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense. So the solution is to immediately recognize the problem, and we can generate 25% of the electricity with solar power within 5 years. Well, it's silicon. It's like chips, like as in Silicon Valley. Okay, I don't see a problem with this. Of course, they're mostly made in Asia now, at the low cost that things come from Asia have. But that doesn't mean that that'll be the case in next year.
Well, I mean, the main problem is the energy companies want their profits.
The energy companies are insane. You don't understand how serious this is. For 14 years, or we should say 13, from September 11th till now, all of the reasoning has been driven by the energy companies' unspoken problem. And their unspoken problem is we are running out of oil and natural gas. And that's what this is all about. We went to Iraq, we went to Afghanistan to get natural gas, and we weren't able to build that pipeline. We went to Iraq. All the experts said there were 230 billion barrels of reserves. Nobody's ever been there in years. The Ba'ath Party, Saddam is a very, very dangerous person, took over and closed the country off. I think it was 1967. It was quite a while ago. Nobody's surveyed since then. So we said, well, Kuwait has oil, Iran has oil. Our estimate, 230. We got there. It was the answer. The real number is 20. Okay? Not 230. If there was a lot of oil in Iraq, we wouldn't have left. Would we withdraw the surface bed and say, oh, war is over? No, right? The reason we went there and now we left is it's a big mistake, and it cost $5 trillion. That's a $5 trillion mistake. Okay. After that, the housing crisis, the banking collapse, the stock market collapse, right? And now they're saying, oh, it's all back to a peak performance now, because what's driving all of the logic of every motion, activity, every job is actually breaking the substratum on the North American continent with high pressure, fracking gas, smashing the earth itself, wrecking it to get out gas. And they're telling me all of a sudden, this is what they're saying, we're a Saudi Arabia of natural gas. It's wrong. The energy people are so deluded. They've labeled, if you have a map of the United States, they show what's called oil shale. And oh look, 60% of the rock is classified as oil shale. Oil shale is nothing at all to do with oil, fossil fuel, or natural gas at all. It is the precursor. If it had been crushed under a continental folding, and if it was shoved under the mantle and subjected to heat, it would turn into oil. That's why it's called oil shale. What it is shale. It's a kind of rock. It doesn't combust. It's not fuel, right? The tar sands are almost in that category. You can burn tar. There is out in the street. How efficient is that? The efficiency is zero. There's no surplus energy. The mining of tar sand takes as much energy as when you burn it to get heat out of it, to generate power. Right? The only reason it's being done is that you can turn electricity into diesel fuel through this extraordinarily complex, difficult, expensive, and hugely wasteful process that generates billions of gallons of polluted water up in the Canadian tundra. And the Canadians had a lot of electricity. They have hydropower up there that they don't use. Huge rivers, and it's the biggest river in North America. Nobody's even heard of the McKinsey River. It's the McKinsey River. It's huge, bigger than Mississippi. Where is it? It's in Canada, wherever. Canada's a bigger country than the United States.
Yeah.
So they have hydropower and they don't need it. And diesel fuel's worth, $4 a gallon. Really more like $5 pretty soon. So we're gonna dredge up 70 feet of bedrock. They call it the overburden. Right? Then we're gonna make steam. And it could be 20 degrees below zero in the Canadian Arctic in the wintertime. We're going to steam that tar up, right? So it's slushy, right? Then we're going to try to shove it into a pipeline and send it to Texas, right? And then we're going to distill it, right? The problem is it's both sticky and corrosive in the pipeline. No problem. We'll call it the Keystone Pipeline, like the Keystone Cops. Okay. Even the oil people don't want to do this, actually. They know it won't work. And it's going to end up, there's so much debris in the tar, there's so much surplus chemical ash and things that you don't want. They have been shipping to some places right on our side of the Great Lakes. Mounds of this fly ash now. Huge, toxic mountains next to the refineries. Okay, we'll just move. If you see that giant mound of material that's useless, right? You're going to ship it from the Canadian border to Texas, right? Why does everything happen in Texas or Florida? I think it has bushies has something to do with all of those problems they have. Right?
Probably.
So we're looking at, in 40 years we've gone from, well, you pump gas in your car, you know, I mean, everyone knows how to do that too. Mountaintop removal. Every 2 weeks, 15 kilotons of dynamite blows off the tops of mountains. That's the size of the Hiroshima bomb. Every 2 weeks is what I've heard. I haven't gone out and checked. I don't want to get near that. It sounds kind of loud and dangerous. Right? They're blowing off the tops of mountains because it's easier just to push what you don't need, what isn't coal, into the valley where just some river, the stream, the fish were. You know, who cares, right? It's coal. Right? Deep sea drilling. One hole cost $1 billion and exploded. Right? Cost $20 billion to clean it up. Okay? Fracking for oil and gas and tar sand excavation and shipping. None of those things existed. I don't know if you noticed before September 11th. The September 11th attack by the Arabs, who just had to throw all the weight and authority of the political power of this country solidly into the hands of the oil companies for some reason. Okay. This is a delusion we're living in. 13, 14 years. A very serious effect on the people around us. We can't live in an environment that in and of itself is irrational and try to make our small rational decisions. There's always some sort of problem. You can ask anybody, they'll notice that. But we can change this, and now, and right here, is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the technical overview. I try to mention that there's all of these different actual mining processes that are all new and completely unsustainable. That's to be polite. And I forgot to mention the.
What about nuclear? You didn't bring that up.
Impossible. Nuclear is not something to bring up in the first place. It's impossible. We had 2 nuclear power plants operating as of 2010. Rabble Canyon, which is a new one. That's the sort of design that we depend on. It's practical. It's called a pressurized reactor. Okay? Mm-hmm. But in this country, there's I think 27 of the earlier designs that are exactly like Fukushima. We had one at San Onofre. They're called boiling water reactors. They don't work. Okay, they were designed for 30 years. And the big problem with them is that they corrode with unexpected, extremely high destructive corrosion on all the internal components and the turbines. Right? It's a complex technical reason it happens. So they're supposed to really be shut down. Okay, they were designed for 30 years. In fact, the Fukushima reactor was supposed to be shut off in May of the year it exploded. And all the villagers went up and said, shut it down. And what did the Japanese government do? Appointed a new local magistrate, provincial judge. He said, well, we're not sure. When the rule and the law and the design said, yeah, it's May, it's done, right? So when the earthquake happened, actually only 3 reactors were actually operational, right, out of 6, right? And that's because it was being considered, right? It wasn't decommissioned. In fact, what had happened was they had taken the fuel assemblies and taken them out, which made it actually more dangerous, right? And they're having a really, really hard time with this right now. The fuel assemblies have to be kept cool or they're going to catch fire, right? If they were in the reactors, when they melted down, like we saw 3 meltdowns, right? It blows up, and that's it. It's a terrible tragedy. Luckily, the wind is going offshore. If the wind had been going the other direction, there'd be 10 million dead people, right? But the fuel assembly doesn't explode; it just burns for 20 years or something, right? And the wind changes. But the part that even our steadfast environmentalists, and I've called them and tried to get them to say something about this, is that Fukushima number 3, right? Daiichi number 3. Because it was the reactors being considered for refurbishment and recommissioning, not completely decommissioning, that was a mixed oxide experiment. They decided to do what the French are doing and what we've said we want to do, which is take some plutonium and mix it with the uranium fuel. It's called MOX. And this is the stupidest. You said we should bring up nuclear energy. We have mountaintop removal, the deep sea drilling that explodes, it doesn't work. the fracking, the tar sands. We have this nuclear problem, fracking for oil. Right? It's a lot of new technologies. Every single one. They're talking about if you take plutonium and you can mix. This is the expert opinion. 6% of the energy content. So you have a uranium fuel assembly. You can get 6% of that as plutonium. You can add and mix 6% at the most. So all of the danger and all the difficulty is all just to get 6% more out of your fuel supply. If you have plutonium. We do have plutonium because all the old nuclear weapons were plutonium, and they've taken them apart. There's sultrate. So you put the plutonium in with the uranium and put it back in the reactor. No problem. Wrong. And you see what happened in Fukushima number 3, right? Nuclear reactors do not run logically. They have at least 30 interlocking processes going simultaneously. And if one of those processes goes wrong, it's a chain reaction. You might notice it 10 processes later, but you have to backtrack and try to figure out what went wrong. That's why 3 Mile Island melted down. They couldn't figure out where the leak was. Okay? As you're running a uranium fission reactor, right, it transforms elements. Things that were uranium become things that aren't. And over time, it becomes unstable. It'll have hot spots, it'll have sudden power surges, right? And that's why you have to eventually take out the fuel assembly when you've only burned something. I think it's like 2% of the actual uranium in the fuel assembly is converted because it becomes too dangerous when the elements build up. Okay? So what's the solution about it? To get 6% more total aggregate power, we're going to put in plutonium in the first place, which is much, much more dangerous and unstable and the most poisonous substance on Earth. And what happens is, if you do that in a standard reactor, they say, oh, no problem, you can do it. You have to rate the reactor. It had a limit. You can't go over so many megawatt output because then it's too hot, right? It's too hot, like it's too hot, it's melt down, right? But you have to change that rule by increasing that 7% to 107% rated power is allowed. Why? Because we're getting more power? No, it's because it becomes 7% unstable above its design. Because the plutonium reaction is so unstable when you mixed it in there, okay? Daiichi number 3 was a MOX experiment. They were testing that. And when that reactor melted down, it didn't just burn a hole in the ground, it exploded in a low-grade nuclear fission reaction. And you can see it if you watch the video. I think it was maybe only in the Russian camera view. They must have been 2 miles away. And the ground shook 2 miles away. And something very, very heavy goes straight up in the air, about 300-400 feet, and straight back down. What kind of thing would come straight back down? It's the entire containment vessel. All the stainless steel and cement. Daiichi number 3 exploded. The other ones had, as they were calling the hydrogen explosions, right? When they get so hot, any water in the reactor, this is what happened at Chernobyl. The heat separates the water and the hydrogen and oxygen, then it explodes, right? That's bad. Daiichi number 3 was a low-grade fission explosion of plutonium because MOX does that. We didn't know for sure. Now we can see that. Nobody will admit that's what happened. Right? And then when it blew up, it turns out, now we know for sure because the United States aircraft carrier Ronald Reagan, Paul Kangas thinks this is really beautiful irony, was stationed in the Pacific and is on its way to Fukushima to rescue the people. They were 130 miles away in a helicopter, just 2 helicopters out in front, when this cloud of radioactive ash descended on the ship. You've heard about this? 27 people are either dead or very, very sick. That's been completely suppressed for the last 3 years that happened. The ship has 5,000 men. Not all of them were on deck. So the men who were on deck said, they joked, they said this is radioactive snow. Right? They joked, but it was the ash from the plutonium. It's 130 miles downwind. The reason that the whole part of the area of Fukushima is completely uninhabitable, they can kill 10 million people, is simply the wind was blowing in that direction offshore. This is a nightmare. Okay? And what do you see? Documentaries, explanations, look it up on the Wikipedia page. Does it make that very clear that the wind is what saved the lives of 10 million people? Well, that's another thing to point out, that nuclear power is really not an option. Okay? It's not an option for a couple of reasons. First of all, the uranium fuel itself is already taken. There are all the reactors in operation right now in the world. They've planned out their 30-year operation, plan with what uranium there is. The uranium supply is being estimated just like the fracking oil supply. They say, well, yeah, it could be lots of uranium, but you're getting to the point where it's so diffuse, it takes more energy to mine it than you get out of it, right? Okay? So within the next 10 years, half of the large uranium mines will be depleted. So the reactors you have now already are slated to burn that uranium. That's it. There's no more uranium. Okay? It's not an option. The second reason, or the third reason not an option, is because we don't know how to make one anymore. The United States doesn't make its own shoes. Okay, there's no company in this country. The same people that are fracking they're too busy to know how to build a nuclear reactor. They just told you it's perfectly safe, and the train car fell off track and set fire to the town yesterday, right? Those are the same people that used to build nuclear power plants back when they had a lot of money and a lot of government assistance, and everyone believed in nuclear power. It was cheap and safe and possibly would power your starship to other planets. Okay. This isn't exactly the same epic, and all of these people have no idea how to build a nuclear power plant. And the technology, we don't have it. The only people that make containment vessels for power plants are the Japanese. You have huge stainless steel containment vessels. If you want to build one, there's a 5-year lead time to get one. And you have to order it from Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. Why? The United States doesn't make power plants, right? All of our efforts, 13, 14 years, all the efforts have gone into these fracking, mountaintop removal. Take a look at what's going on around you. You cannot build a rational machine requiring extraordinary precision when every single aspect of your existence is based on irrational behavior. It's not safe. Do you know how to build a nuclear power plant?
Oh yeah.
I don't.
I'm just kidding.
I haven't got. I wouldn't even want to even look at one of those things. Like, oh, okay. Right. I like solar power. In fact, my friend, he's been doing this for years. He said it's very, very true. Actually, he said it's the solar. All the people who work on solar power and energy, they are the best nuclear engineers. We have found the safest place to put nuclear power, which is 93 million miles away, and we're going to keep it. Solar power guys are nuclear engineers. That's exactly what they do.
And they're getting better and better at it all the time.
It's surprising. It's remarkable. There are quite a few improvements actually right now that haven't been widely understood. One of the things that hasn't been understood, I just heard about it yesterday from my friend who knows everything there is to know about it. The price has come down in the last 6 years by 80%.
Wow.
For solar panels. Right now, you're not going to instantly solve your. It's going to take time and effort and lots of other things. But you have to do this now before you run out of oil. You can't say, oh, well, I love driving my Camaro down El Camino Real. I'll get one of those dinky little solar cars later. The only way to build now is to use the energy that we're still producing to do it. If you run out of this energy, you won't be able to do it. There won't be any way to do it. And it isn't even a question of I could get on a treadmill and produce enough electricity with this, make them slow. It's never worked. Right? Society is dependent on this process of manufacturing, consumption, all that. And the only way you're going to get solar is to recognize for 13 years it's going the wrong way. Pick up, he was like the kid fell off the bicycle when he got the bike, but he'll learn. Okay, the last 30 years, just like a child, he fell off of his bicycle. He was on the ground, he's splint. He's crying. I know I am. Okay, we have to pick up society, get rid of the Republicans, and get rid of the Democrats too, actually, and find the people that know how it works. Right? Okay.
Just get rid of the government in general.
I wouldn't go so far as that. I've never really seen that work well. I actually have,
Well, you haven't really seen anything work well, for that matter.
No. Actually, this indictment against San Bruno, it's the government. I went to the FBI. I talked to the FBI. They gave my thing. They read the thing. They're going to do something, right? the government has a long history, and as I mentioned, the problem is it's like you fell off of a bicycle. Right? At the same time, the oil industry did what did. All the elections are fraud in the United States. They're completely fraudulent in San Francisco. The irrational illogic isn't just the people that pump oil. It's the other people that have no interest in their environment. You look at San Francisco, let's take this camera, let's go into Dolores Park right now and take a look at the environmental movement as San Francisco expresses it. You see what they're doing over there?
Yeah.
Why?
Tearing the whole place up. Digging big holes.
The people who rig the elections are actually sicker mentally. And this is the entire political system. That doesn't mean it's the government. See, this is why I distinguish. If there hasn't been elections in San Francisco since 1996. I had film crews out in 1996, 97, 98, and I found the actual ballots, the ones that were floating in the bay. I found where they were before they got thrown in the bay. I actually took pictures. I interviewed a registrar worker. She found where they were on pier, I believe she said it was 70. They were storing the real ballots out of sight, and then since they were on a pier, later it was said it was found floating in the bay. It's logical. There's a lot of paper. The way rigging the elections, there were 2 sets of ballots. They had a pre-position set outside the registrar's office. They would pull in the minute, the clock hit 8 o'clock, start running through the office, through the machine. Those weren't your ballots. Your ballots were out here. They don't even get down there till 8:45 from anywhere, right? Okay, but the real ballots were put on trucks. The city provided trucks that if you happen to drive for your individual polling people down to the registrar's office, oh no, you go here, we'll help you, trucks, right? After the second time this, I went out filming this, Willie Brown supposedly got re-elected in the Richmond. They said, oh, everyone hates him, right? Really despises him, literally. Ask anybody here what respect they have for Willie Brown. Ask the Negroes, the black people, whichever word you prefer, right? They don't even talk about it, right? It'll be the same with Obama, right? What has he done for his community? Right? What happened is the system that is based on this criminal thievery is insane. And the system needs to constantly justify itself with one point of hope. And the system did realize that if you pick somebody who's not of the dominant, well-understood Caucasian society, people will believe it. Oh, look, see, we're grasping for something, and it has to be an Asian guy or a Negro of some kind, right? But only once. They use that person, and that's it. The people behind him, and none of his people are behind him at all, right? And so, 150 years of slavery and, ill treatment towards the black folks, but after Obama's been there showing what, we're all equal, you lost our sympathy, black folks, right? Get a job, right? Instead of you stay tie your shoes, right? Okay. Did Willie Brown build a strong, vibrant, multicultural community? I don't really see that. It was before. And I think it had to do with tearing down 9 square blocks of public housing all at once, which I tried to stop. It's genocide, in fact. Gone, destroyed everything, right? Bulldozed everything. Then they brought him back, essentially, in the form of Newsom, and they've been destroying the white people, if you will. Everyone else is being evicted out of town, right? First it was the poor black folks, now it's everybody else. The criminals who do not get elected, this is their process. It's a bipolar disorder, that's what they call it. It's diagnosed. You see it in Dolores Park. You see it all over the place, right? They've destroyed the Young Museum, built a bridge that doesn't work, destroyed a bus station, tore apart the main library. Almost all the public buildings have been changed, modified, or demolished, right? In a period of 14 years. Why? Every single public building, right? And replaced with every single time with something that is completely nothing, non-functional. The Modern Art Museum. Are you trying to tell me that Willie Brown and Gavin Newsom appreciate modern art? You're laughing. I saw you smile.
They have that arrow thing found by the Bay Bridge.
The arrow.
the bow and arrow thing, the ugly sculpture of all time.
I haven't seen that. I haven't been up there because it's not safe to drive on. I cannot drive across the bridge. I know it's not safe. I gave them a retrofit plan for the old bridge, and I've been in contact with Professor Astani at Berkeley for the last 14 years. He was their only engineer they ever hired, who kept coming to meetings on his own personal volition, saying, I took an oath as an engineer to protect the safety and lives. And I'm telling you all, what they're talking about isn't even going to be a thing. Okay? It's not even a bridge, right? I wrote a letter to the chief engineer who was in charge of this, Jim Roberts, in 1998, and he wrote back, and I asked him, you have this bridge that it only has one tower. Where's the other tower? It's sitting on a concrete roadway. And according to Professor Ustani, an earthquake is going to start to sway around like this, right? This computer did the model, right? It's mathematics.
Yeah.
I said, how are you going to keep that attached? And he wrote me back a letter saying, we will use titanium bolts and titanium slides, right? Titanium is used in airplanes, not because it's stronger, it's because it has a higher temperature limit, right? When planes fly very fast, everything heats up.
It's lighter too, isn't it?
It isn't stronger than steel. If you want to compare the two,
Are you serious?
There's some applications where you can get some additional qualities that are lighter. Okay, it really isn't. All right. Otherwise, it would be used for a lot of things that steel was used for. Right. In fact, they only just now found a way to form it, titanium, into a large thing. They're replacing all the Commander Coppola, the machine gun little hatches on the M1 tank with titanium. Okay. To save 4 pounds or something on a 70-ton tank, 54 to 70 depends on how it's outfitted, right? How much did it cost? Right? Just this little thing. It's like the size of this round table. Okay, it's not used in engineering. Steel is what you use in engineering, right? So he writes me this letter like I'm an idiot, like oh Superman will come out of the phone booth and zoom over and hold the bridge when the earthquake comes, right? So 12 years later, after this, as they're tightening those bolts down, they all broke. Not one of them. They all broke. I have a letter when I asked them about this. Okay, see?
Yeah.
I was very, very close to the details at the time, and I'm not trained. Right? You see, everybody in the audience is far more aware of the facts than the people you see. Who are those people? In the last 40 years, San Francisco, you need a new street corner, you need a new post or something, right? Our experts said so down at City Hall. They've never given the name of anyone in the last 14 years. Your expert, what? Right? Where's the engineering staff at City Hall? Where's the budget? Have they published the budget in the last 10 years? Right? Okay. So if you can really grasp what I'm saying is that the illogic is what we are in. There is no choices you can make if you're in a process that's illogical. Everyone's on a roller coaster right now, right? But the roller coaster is broken. We know it is because we know that the people who built it are idiots, right? Do you have a choice in this? I mean, where's the rational behavior tomorrow morning? We have to be a rational person and live a good life, right? You're on a roller coaster that's really kind of rickety and you know it's going to break. What part of your behavior is going to modify when it does break? When everybody else is falling off of it too. It doesn't matter whether you button your shirt correctly and stuff, smile, right? Try to keep calm, right? What you need to do is fix the broken roller coaster, right? You see.
Probably. Well,
All right.
thanks, Professor Ryan.
Oh yes.
Talk to
Thanks
you
to you.
again soon.
Try not to use